This mountain path with mossed slabs, caves, crags, and purple wildflower cliff, swarming with bees, was hot but pleasant in Saxony, Switzerland. And she appreciated the cleanliness of its nature. No access of poison growth, stalking creature, aggressive bugs, or moist mystery. Clean. These were Wagner's favorite mountains to hike in, which excited her for good reason. As a principal dancer at the Metropolitan Opera, Wagner was a colleague. She'd come to Germany with an admirer turned lover, who was back where they were staying in Schmilke, an old logging village near the border of Chechnya, 2 hours from Dresden. Now a tourist destination and vacation spot for Germans and Czechs in cities nearby. Tucked away next to the Elbe River at the base of the mountain, it's a romantic place, but in her heart there was no romance. At least not for a lover. And this one hated hiking, which was good because she quickly realized what an annoying human he was. The light of travel can expose personality traits unseen in routine environments. Inviting him was impulsive, but she didn't have time to vet every semi-attractive admirer with an acceptable list of interests and money who wanted to have a good time. She had a career to maintain, and there's very little loyalty in the arts these days. No matter how good she was, hordes of dancers were ready to take her place, and youth eventually wins. Her main problem, more than wanting to get away from the idiot, was that she'd been depressed and didn't know why. Was there anxiety in maintaining her position? Yes, but she'd argue it was healthy. An anxiety-free life is a lazy one. Was her personal life lacking in warmth? Sure, but this is what she signed up for, and life goes through stages. Was the world in general falling apart with every other person expert, judge, and jury? In political conversation, I don't know, yeah, maybe, and I probably won't vote were go-tos that got a rise out of people who accused her of privileged complacency. She found the accusation ironic because she grew up with next to nothing, and those who leveled it were usually transplants from the wealthier neighborhoods of whatever sheltered suburb they came from. She didn't have the luxury of being self-righteous. No, the dull melancholy and creeping anger had nothing to do with regret or guilt. Life was good. She worked hard for it and hoped this trip would refresh, bring her back to a positive, youthful perspective. Trusting hard work with discipline and the right amount of charm would bring their just rewards. A perspective proven correct by recent success. But now this man, this truly stupid man, had smuggled her growing cynicism all the way across the ocean. Fortunately, the landscape brought some redemption. Over the last few days, she hiked morning to night. City-born, she hadn't discovered the simple act of walking in nature for long periods of time until her early 20s. Now approaching 30, it was a blossoming passion. On this early afternoon, half a day in on the winding trail, with expansive vistas of cascading granite exposing layers of sediment beneath tree and boulder swelling, stabbing, stretching fractal towards pastures spotted with villages barely visible in the distance. She took an unmarked path, snaking around the thick where she knew she wouldn't run into other hikers, and took off her shirt. She poured water on her head, rubbing it into cropped black hair. It dripped down her face and chest, and she licked her salty lips, spit, then closed her eyes to feel sun on pale skin above blue glowing veins. The more she hiked, the more she craved solitude on the trail. It was impossible to completely avoid other hikers, not being familiar with less trodden, off-map paths. But she was sometimes lucky enough to find her lonesome way, and the more she did, the more it became a skill. Near the peak, she discovered a steep incline shaped like a staircase, leading up to a finger of cliff. From here, you can see past the entire mountain range below endless clouds billowing, throwing shape-shifting patches of light and shade on rolling fields as far as the eye can see. She opened her arms wide to feel the breeze against her body as birds flew just out of reach. They know me, she thought. Everything here belongs to me, and I belong to it. With an impulse of freedom, she took off her clothes and danced, striking arabesque and pirouette on the edge without fear. There was no thought now, no worry, no annoyance. And even with a fall to her death, one false step away, no danger for a demi-plie and a releve in the majestic arms of the mother. She was perfect and invisible until she heard footsteps coming up the stairs. The glaring sun blurred her vision, so she couldn't make out young, old, man, or woman. She grabbed the clothes from her backpack, but before she could get them on, there appeared a 7-foot giant of a German man. Bronze skin, blonde hair, blue eyes blazing, grinning ear to ear, thick, solid, and completely naked except for a backpack, knit socks, and hiking boots. "Don't come any closer," she said, rushing to get dressed. He replied in German with a gentle voice that contradicted his figure and caused her to second-guess the emerging panic. But cynical logic took over, and she concluded it was more of a reason to worry. He moved toward her. "Stop! Don't come any closer," she demanded as he finished dressing. He spoke again. "I don't speak German," she replied. "No German." "American?" he replied. "American, yes, American. And I have people who know where I am, so do not come any closer." She put on her backpack, and a water bottle fell. There was a moment of tense silence where neither of them moved until he made a slight motion forward, and she rushed past him to the stairs, making her way quickly. When she looked back, lost her balance, and plunged to the bottom, scraping granite the entire way down. Bruised, bleeding and in shock, she tried to collect herself. She could see the naked giant descending slowly with wild beams of sunlight around his head like a crown, and tried to stand, but her leg was broken. She frantically searched for the backpack, for her phone, and called the idiot travel companion. "Hey, beautiful. Tired of nature yet?" he answered. "Listen," she yelled. "I need you not to talk. My leg is broken and I think someone is trying to hurt me." "What? Are you kidding?" he answered. The call was breaking up. "Hello? Can you hear me? This is not a joke. I'm somewhere off the North Trail, really far up. Find someone and get them here, please." The call dropped as the giant finished his descent with a presence even more intimidating than when she first saw him, and the grin was gone. He was serious now, and he stood examining her for a moment, then removed his backpack, boots, and socks. "There are people coming for me. I called the police. The police are coming here." she yelled. He kept on staring with no reply. She stared too, overcome by a calm that comes when injury isolates mind from body. A surreal fear that prepares us to accept death while instinctually fighting to stay alive. He bent down, but she flinched and closed her eyes, so he backed up. She tried her phone but couldn't connect, and just as she was about to scream, he nodded, pointed to his leg, and lifted it up and down until she realized he was asking if her leg was broken. Oh my God, shit, she said. She took a deep breath of relief. Yes, broken, she said, pointing to the leg. He pulled 2 water bottles out of his pack, one of which was hers, brought it to her to drink, then wet a sock and gently wiped blood from her wounds, which stung out the shock for the break to fully register. She groaned in pain and stubborn tears ran down. He pulled back. No, it's okay, it just hurts. He gestured the question of whether he should continue, and she nodded. Yes, please. He finished, put his boots back on, and reached out his arms, moving them up and down in a motion that looked like an act of worship. You want to carry me? She asked through the tears. He repeated the motion. Yes, she nodded. Thank you. He put one backpack over each shoulder, and as he carefully lifted her, she noticed his face was strong and rigid like it was cut from the mountains. Wind through the trees calmed her, and as she walked a steady, even pace through the darkening woods, she felt a strange peace. They passed a moss-covered cave with yellow butterflies fluttering above, and she thought, I'll just live here forever, then passed out. The giant, bare as birth, with the dancer draped in his arms and a somber look of concern, came across a local woman, a policeman, and a dumb mother searching for them not far from the village. Oh my God, what did he do to her? Arrest this asshole, the idiot yelled. The local, who spoke English, replied that they knew him. The giant laid her down gently, and the officer who was carrying the first aid kit began dressing her wounds while the 3 Germans spoke with each other. What the hell is going on? The soon-to-be ex-lover demanded. Please, said the local, we are trying to help her. This is Engel. He's lived here all his life. Engel spoke and the local interpreted. He says he was hiking and turned a corner to see the woman dancing like an angel on the cliff. He was excited because he had never seen someone like him dance this way before. Someone like him, the idiot replied. Yes, she was naked, and Engel was a naturist. What do you mean she was naked? She wasn't wearing clothes. Why wasn't she wearing any fucking clothes? But what the hell is a naturist? There's a tradition of people in Germany who believe nudity is healthy, particularly in nature. Nudity in certain public places is accepted here. Why is she all banged up? She fell and Engel helped her. He wouldn't hurt anyone. He's a pacifist, as all naturists are. The dancer's eyes opened. She looked at the group, then at Engel and smiled. He smiled back and spoke to her for the local to interpret. He says he's sorry he scared you. He only wanted to tell you how beautiful your dancing was. He hopes you recover quickly and would like to know your name. Michelle, she said softly. Michelle, this is Engel. He nodded. The sun was almost set, and a warm haze hovered over the village, just visible in the distance. The policeman packed the first aid kit and spoke to the local, who announced that the nearest hospital had been informed of their arrival. With a look of reverence, Engel bent down slowly, lifted Michelle in his arms, and carried her to the village.
Where my mom was on the phone with me, and she was in the middle of one of her 20-minute stories that I could barely follow. But she gets her feelings hurt when you interrupt her, so the only thing to do is listen. But really all I wanted was to go to the bar, so I was walking laps around the neighborhood in hopes the story would end and I could have my first drink. It was 8:30 p.m. and I was due. Still, Mom's story was pretty good. She was telling me about how my dad fell in the pond back home in Mississippi and couldn't crawl out because he's got bad knees, which would just be funny and kind of sad if it weren't for the fact that there's a 6-foot alligator in the pond with him. So Dad's trying to scramble out of the water and keeps sliding in mud, and meanwhile there floats the alligator, all scales and prehistoric eyes just watching. Here in New York, I was passing construction site after construction site. Old buildings going down and new condos going up. New expensive condos that no one's actually going to live in, when my mom talked away. That one would have been fine. A 20-minute story about an alligator eyeballing my dad like he was just some overgrown beaver, sizing him up for dinner and deciding against it like eating my dad was just too much trouble. That is an excellent story if Mom could have just stuck to the point. But of course she couldn't do that. No one back home ever can, and I love them all for it. But the real problem is you can't call animal control on an alligator, she was saying. Trust me, I tried it. They told me the state budget was cut and they no longer have the equipment or the manpower to wrangle alligators. Can you believe that? There's practically a dinosaur living in the pond and there's nothing anyone can do about it. There's no one to call, and I certainly can't kill it. Your dad is a terrible shot. He hates guns, you know that, but he pretends to like them. I blame his cousin Jerry for that. There's no place to step off safely, to make a graceful exit. Best to just see it through. I hadn't been home to visit in nearly a year. I cut down a side street I don't often take for variety. It's an ugly chunk of sidewalk covered in busted bottles, but it always has the best graffiti. Mom's going on and on, the gray unfinished 12-story tomb homes for future tech guys looming above me, making me feel like an ant walking through a graveyard, the half moon glimmering, a smear of clouds over that one purple spotlight that always makes it look like aliens are coming. That's what I was thinking when I saw this guy walking toward me. Tall, hoodie down over his face, hands in his pockets, walking awfully fast, straight at me, not veering. The green plywood marking off construction sites to my right, the street deserted except for me and this guy, half-finished empty buildings all around. Mom was working to a pitch, the volume of my headphones peaking. And the worst part is, your cousin has been out shooting the deer again, shooting them. There are children who play in those woods. It's fine if he wants to go to deer camp and blast away, but not on the family land. If he wants to hunt so bad, why don't you just shoot the damn alligator? The man in the hoodie came closer and closer, his eyes down to the pavement, hands by his side, heavy boots stomping the concrete. He was tall, and there seemed something off about him, a weird fury to his walk. Just as we passed, the man in the hoodie turned towards me and grabbed my shoulders and threw me against the construction wall. I hit my head against the wood, knocking one ear of my headphones out. "What are you doing?" I said, like an idiot. He slammed me into the wall again, pinned me there against the wood. "George," said Mom into the headphone. "George, what's happening?" I tried to fight him off, to push him away, but he was bigger and stronger than me. It was like falling off something tall and waving your arms on the way down. There was no stopping what was about to happen. "Let go," I said, "let me go." The man reared back and punched me. It knocked the words out of me, which I guess was the point. I thumped against the wall, and he held me there with one fist. The man dropped his hoodie. He was blonde, very pale, and his eyes were cracked and yellow-rimmed, lizardy. He gazed at me, half smiling, half grimacing. I didn't know if he was drunk or on drugs or just crazy. His eyes couldn't seem to focus, his head nodding a little, leering at me as if I were some animal he just yanked out of the bush. "What's happening?" said Mom in my ear. "George, please tell me you're okay." The man let go of my jacket and put his right hand on my chest, just above my heart, and pressed down hard. "Take my wallet," I said, my own blood on my lips. "You can have it." The man kind of grinned at me, pushing harder on my chest, the full weight of him on my ribs. We made eye contact, and the man held my gaze. His eyes shifted into focus. I knew he could feel my heart beating against his hand. He knew just how afraid I was. The man smiled at me. He leaned his face close enough to bite me. I could see the saliva on his teeth. "Jesus, help!" screamed my mom in my ears. "Somebody help!" I had a clear moment in my brain. I stuck my foot against the fence and pushed, shoving the man as hard as I could. He caught his boot against the no standing sign and tripped. I watched him fall, the hugeness of him tumbling off the curb in a free fall, backward to the pavement. I watched his head hit the ground and bounce. He let out this cry, an almost animal wail. I took off running harder than I ever had in my life. I ran to the end of the block. I only looked back once. He lay there on the street, moaning out into the night, almost like he was crying. I rounded the corner and ran into my side stitch. I only stopped when I saw another person, a tiny woman pushing a baby carriage, her hood down, fur lining her collar. She seemed to be happy, making goo-goo noises at the kid who clapped his mittened hands. "George, honey," said Mom. She never stopped screaming. Just at some point I stopped hearing her. "George, are you dead?" "I'm fine, Mom," I said out of breath. "Just a crazy guy harassing me." "You need to call the police," she said. "I'll call him for you. I'll call him right now from Mississippi." I said, "I'm fine, Mom." I might have been 100% fine. There was a pause. For a second, maybe 10, maybe 30, I don't know. "Well, okay," she said, "as long as you say so." I could hear the hurt in her voice, the worry. "We couldn't go now," I said. "I need to catch my breath." "Well, if you're okay." "Thanks for telling me the story," I said, "about Dad and the alligator. It was a really good story." There was a moon out, but not any stars. There are never any stars here. I made it to the bar. It was only 2 blocks away. My stool was waiting for me, my own personal mug too, number 46. It's corny, but there's something nice about it. Being so far from where you came from, not knowing anybody really. But there it is, your stool and your mug, your home. I thought about telling the regulars, Tiff and Dave and Stella and Meg and Bert and Old Man Steve. But nobody was talking much, just listening to the 90s music they always played.